Welcome to the Healthcare Technology Report, a leading information source on healthcare technology companies and solutions. Today, we speak with Derek Lowe, founder and CEO of Medallion, a leading provider network management platform streamlining operations for healthcare organizations nationwide. Since founding the company in 2020, Derek has grown Medallion to more than 250 customers with a team of over 175 people. Its platform has saved healthcare teams over 500,000 administrative hours and delivered a 50% reduction in operating costs by automating credentialing, enrollment, and monitoring for providers. The company has raised $85 million from investors including Sequoia Capital, Spark Capital, GV, Optum Ventures, and Salesforce Ventures. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow. Derek, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Thanks for having me.
So you just had a great announcement yesterday on your recent round. Maybe let's kick off with that.
Yeah, for sure. We're super excited. We just raised another $43 million in venture financing. The round was led by Accrue Capital. They're a really, really cool firm, somewhat newer. They were started, I think, 6 years ago, and their founder is Teresa Gao. She's, I believe, the only or the first female VC billionaire, and came from Excel. We were just super impressed with the whole Accrue team, like really enjoyed meeting them. Felt like they really understood our problem space. They do quite a bit in healthcare. So yeah, I felt like a really good partnership and fit. Yeah, then we got a bunch of support from our existing investors like GV and Sequoia and Spark Capital. So yeah, we feel really fortunate that the round came together like it did. And we're excited to use this capital to keep going after our mission to eliminate as much administrative waste as possible in US healthcare.
There's only a select set or percentage of startups that are able to attract the type of investors you've attracted. What do you attribute that to? Did you have pre-existing relationships or maybe even good working the situations in your past before you started Medallion?
I had started one company before this one that was acquired, and that company went through Y Combinator. But that company actually did not raise that much money. We only raised $700K roughly. And by today's standards, it's essentially like nothing. And I think Y Combinator itself gives like $500K now to new startups. So we raised very little, but I did know a couple investors from that experience, and they did help to ultimately seed the company. I don't think it was just because of the relationships, but I think that helps when you, especially at the seed stage, have developed relationships over time. At the seed, you're really betting on founders, and founding team, because there typically is like very little data. Maybe that's changing a little bit now with how fast some things are moving with AI, but largely I think still today at seed, it's based on your conviction in the founder and the people that are starting the company. So I do think that it helped a little bit, but then I mean, certainly the majority of the capital we've raised has been from investors and firms that I had no prior relationship with, really. So I'd say that how we've been able to accomplish it is a combination of business traction as well as, continued conviction in the team that we're building to continue to execute on the pretty aggressive goals and milestones that we're looking to achieve.
And your solution is pretty specific within the overall healthcare, health tech space. Let's start off with how you first uncovered this problem that you would go and solve.
Yeah, for sure. I was exploring actually a couple of different ideas in healthcare, and then I ended up talking to a friend of mine who has founded a pretty substantial digital health company. They're a few hundred million in revenue. And I was asking him, he was the one person at the time that I knew in healthcare. I actually didn't know anybody else really that was building healthcare or really was in healthcare at all. And so I was very new to the space, and I ended up talking to him. I went to his office in New York and sat down with him for like 20 minutes and was asking him actually about this completely different idea that I had in essentially building a crowdsourcing platform for rare disease diagnostics. And yeah, in the end, I asked him in the last 5 minutes of the conversation how he scaled his company and what some of the top challenges were in that journey. And that's where he talked about everything that we do today. He was essentially like, credentialing is a massive pain point, and it's still really unsolved. You have to hire a bunch of people. It's a bunch of manual paperwork, manual processes. And yeah, that's how I learned about this problem space and got really excited about the ability to make an impact in healthcare. We're behind the scenes, so we're not obviously in the front lines of care. But if you look at just the amount of spend like every year that's spent on healthcare administration, it's $1.5 trillion.
Hmm.
I think at the time that I started the company 5 years ago, it was like a trillion. So it's like, it's only been climbing. And McKinsey actually a few years ago did this whole study on the back office and all the different places that they thought there's inefficient or wasted spend. And the number they came up with at the time was like 300 billion. So it's probably now maybe even like half a trillion. So it's a lot of wasted spend. And yeah, I mean, I hope that more people come in to build it in this space because definitely there's not a single one company that's going to really make a difference. It's going to be a collection of a bunch of companies.
Did you kind of wonder why this hadn't been solved before? I mean, you would think that maybe one of the existing software providers to these healthcare organizations would have offered a module related to that.
Well, so I think it's a couple of things. One is, a kind of a structural thing about the way that the current market works, like the incumbents in this market, which is that they really serve the teams that are doing this work. And so they're kind of like, Monday.com or Airtable, but it's specific for these workflows. So it's workflow software, but it's not actually automation, and at least not in a big way. They offer some automation for pieces of the puzzle, but very, very limited. And so our goal from the start was to be able to actually take on the entire workflow and automate all of it. And so, yeah, I mean, especially now with AI, that's never been more possible. And I think the way that we've been trying to build the business actually was in some ways a little bit ahead of its time because there were things that, 5 years ago, we thought we would never be able to automate, such as phone calling, that now actually we have been able to automate because of AI.
Hmm. So you have a great use case example on your website with the Tampa hospital. Maybe tell us, for the benefit of our audience, the exact pain point. What was the pre-existing process for credentialing, and what has your solution done, and how much has it reduced the time to credential?
So I guess firstly, credentialing is a bit of an overloaded term. Actually, like if you're operating in the industry, it means a bunch of different things. So I'll give you an example. People might call cross-state licensing, right? Like getting providers licensed in different states for telehealth credentialing. And then there's also payer credentialing, where you're actually, working with insurance payers to register your provider network with insurance payers. And so there's different types of workflows that are actually pretty different. I mean, they all have a lot of commonalities from a data perspective, and like the steps are largely the same, but they're different. And so it depends on the exact specific workflow we're talking about. But the most automated we've gotten a workflow is essentially near 100% automated. And so that's a bit about the under the hood, and we use a combination of traditional automation techniques and then now, newer techniques like AI to automate various pieces of these workflow steps. And yeah, the way that it's done today without a solution like Medallion is typically that you're hiring a team of people and they're then doing a lot of these workflows manually, and they're working out of a software system that is maybe spreadsheets, is maybe one of these specific legacy credentialing workflow systems, but that's the standard on how it works today. And yeah, the ultimate outcome is that, I mean, in some cases, we're able to speed up credentialing by 20 days or even faster in other cases. That's really enabled some of our clients to be able to actually see patients a lot faster and generate revenue quicker.
And currently, how do you assess where you are in your company life cycle? I mean, I'm presuming it's still early days. What's your kind of market penetration?
Yeah, I mean, we feel like we're still just grazing the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's still like so much more we can go after. So we feel like we're still getting started even 5 years in, and think that there's just a lot to be able to go after in this market. We can build a really large, IPO scale company in this industry. So yeah, we're pretty excited. And obviously this financing allows us to keep working towards that vision.
Hmm. So you went to Yale. While you were there, you're studying statistics. Did you feel like you would eventually use your knowledge education degree to go into entrepreneurship?
Well, I did both CS and in stats actually, and actually started in CS. And I mean, yeah, I definitely thought that I would do something in tech. I didn't know that it would be this until probably closer to the end of my time at Yale. But yeah, I mean, definitely happy with where things have gone so far. It's been a lot of fun.
And was there as much of an ecosystem? I mean, it's more commonplace to hear of folks coming out of Stanford. I mean, that's well known.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that come out of Yale, but how was that kind of environment for becoming an entrepreneur?
No, it was pretty interesting. I mean, yeah, my year, CS was still actually a relatively small major. I think there were maybe like 70 to 100 people. So it was pretty small. I think less than 10% probably of my class. And yeah, I was the only person that went to Y Combinator at least, and that I knew was like graduating and doing a startup. I was one of the only people. There may be a couple others, but the year above me, there was one set of people that had gone through Y Combinator, and I was friends with one of them actually from high school, and he ended up kind of helping to do like a mock YC interview to like help me prepare when we got an interview. So we flew out to California. At the time, it was all like in person, right? There's really no like virtual interview. So we flew out to San Francisco. It was one of the first times I'd been here. It was really nerve-wracking and stressful. Then when we actually were accepted, it was really exciting. So that was pretty interesting because I do think if I'd gone to Stanford or MIT, it would have been way more normal. But at least in 2017, when I graduated, it was definitely not something that most people were doing.
Were there some eye-opening insights that you gleaned from your YC experience?
Yeah, I mean, there were some things that were really interesting. I mean, so my first company was actually in the education space, and we built an app that was kind of like Duolingo, but for learning how to code. Not as good, certainly not nearly as successful, but we did get featured on the front page of the App Store actually, and that was right when we started by Combinator. So we had this like massive like jump in users. TechCrunch like wrote about the feature, and as a result, Udacity saw that and they actually reached out to try to buy us. And so like during our YC, and I think this is like very rare probably, but during YC we were given multiple acquisition offers, and yeah, we like flew across New York to talk to Code Academy, and then yeah, we like were going to Mountain View to meet with the Udacity executives, and I mean it was like 22 probably at the time, maybe 23. So that was like a really cool experience, and learned a ton through that on just like M&A and how that whole process works. Obviously at a very small scale. We were tiny, so this was not any type of like major transaction, but it was still really cool. Just out of college, it was pretty fun. So I think that was actually a really good learning experience. And then a year and a half-ish later, we then actually did get acquired. So then I got to see the full process through because we ended up not selling this first time around. And we ended up raising a small seed round. So yeah, that was actually the most interesting part of the YC experience. And then obviously meeting other founders was super cool. And the YC partners at the time were really welcoming and definitely learned some cool things from them too.
Now, currently Medallion is a different experience because presumably you're bigger. This is a bigger organization. Tell us a little bit about your company, how it's set up. Are you distributed, virtual, hybrid, and what you aim your culture to be like?
Yeah, we're around 200 full-time employees now. So yeah, certainly much different. And yeah, I mean, it's been really fun building this team. I think we've got a really great team. In terms of learnings, building the executive team is super critical and making sure that that top layer of senior folks is really aligned on what the goals are and is able to work really well together. Over the past 5 years, there's been times where our executive team it's like really gelled together, and then times where there's pockets where one person maybe doesn't get along with another person, or there's someone on the team that needs to be replaced and is a weaker performer. And I think we finally, 5 years in, got to the point where now, I feel like everybody on the team is really strong and that there's good cohesion amongst the group. And that's really cool. We actually haven't really gotten to that point until now across the entire exec team. So it's really hard to hire really great execs and equally hard to find people that actually all mesh well together. So I think that's been something that's been a very really interesting learning. And then ultimately that really drives then the culture downward. So yeah, I mean, we care a lot about obviously moving quickly. So bias for action is one of our top values. And things like ownership mentality, running through walls, acting as one team. These are all things that I think are really important and are only possible when you hire in people that innately, I think, really have those traits. Because I think some of those things are pretty hard to be able to teach and slash like coach.
Mhm. It's interesting talking to founders and those that are scaling their companies quickly because they need to adapt and change how they lead their companies from sometimes month to month just because things are moving so quickly. I'm curious what a key insight that you've uncovered or you've come to realize in the recent past on how you can improve as a leader.
Yeah, it's a great question. One recently is as the company's grown to the scale that's grown to, I've realized that, especially because we're fully remote, communicating information that may be obvious to me, maybe obvious to our exec team, but is not obvious to our team is super important. So I know some founders that do this via sending out memos or others that do it by giving maybe longer all hands presentations. I think there's a bunch of different ways to accomplish that, but I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. We're coming up on time. Two final questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
I mean, probably my parents. I would say both of them have had a huge impact on me. They were both born in Hong Kong and lived a bunch of different places throughout their early years. And then they immigrated to the US when they were pretty young. And yeah, like came from essentially nothing and had to work their way up. And, I think they've instilled a lot of those type of values into me around things like work ethic. And yeah, I'd say they've definitely been the biggest influence.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity cause or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
I'd say that one of the biggest ones is education. So, for example, I've donated not a lot of money, but some money to my high school just because I had a really amazing time there. And I think education is super important. And my first company was in that space. And I think it's one of the biggest ways that you can increase someone's ability to have a great life and be able to make money and, provide for themselves. So that's one of the biggest causes that I care a lot about and hope to do more there over time.
Excellent. Well, Derek, I want to thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Likewise. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.